They came through the door of the Hargrove Hotel ballroom at 8:47 in the evening, and they came in together, which was the detail that made it deliberate rather than accidental. Daniel had his hand on the small of her back, not the uncertain hand of a man who is not sure what he is doing, but the settled, possessive hand of a man who has decided and wants the room to know it. Celeste Moreau walked beside him in a gown that I recognized as Valentino haute couture, deep emerald green, the kind of dress that costs more than most people's annual salary and is designed to announce exactly that fact the moment it enters any room. 112 people were seated at the rehearsal dinner tables. 112 people who had been invited to celebrate the wedding that was supposed to happen tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock in the private chapel of the Hargrove estate. The room was beautiful. Long tables dressed in white linen with arrangements of ivory garden roses and eucalyptus, crystal candle holders throwing warm light across the faces of Daniel's business associates and his family, and the handful of my own people I had been permitted to invite, which had been a number we had negotiated down from 12 to 7 because Daniel said the guest list was already stretched. I was sitting at the main table. I was wearing a cream silk blouse and a dark skirt I had bought the previous year at a department store during a sale. Simple, clean, the kind of clothes a bank teller wears when she is trying to look appropriate for a formal event without being able to afford the formal event's expected standard. I had dressed like this for 4 years, on purpose. Daniel walked to the center of the room. Celeste Moreau stayed beside him. He was not looking at me. He was looking at the room, at the 112 people who were now, almost uniformly, looking at him and the woman in the emerald Valentino. What would you do if the man you had spent 4 years building a quiet, careful, deliberately ordinary life beside, a man you had cooked meals for and listened to and supported through 3 career transitions and 1 near bankruptcy? What would you do if that man walked into your rehearsal dinner with another woman and looked across the room at you and smiled the specific smile of someone who has been planning this moment? What would you do if he picked up a microphone? What would you do if he said, "I know this is not what anyone expected tonight, but I have realized I cannot go through with tomorrow. Celeste has offered me a life I have been working toward my entire career, and I am not going to pretend that what I have with..." And here he gestured toward me at my cream blouse and my department store skirt. Whatever this has been, that it is the same thing. It is not. She is a bank teller. She wears clothes that she finds on sale. She has no family to speak of, no connections, nothing to offer someone who is trying to build something real. I am sorry, but some of us cannot afford to be sentimental. What would you do if some of the room went quiet in the way that honest people go quiet when they have witnessed something they cannot excuse, and some of the room laughed in the specific way that people laugh when they want to align themselves with the person who has just demonstrated power? What would you do if, in the back of the room, in a chair against the far wall, where he had been sitting quietly for 2 hours, nursing a single glass of water, a man in a plain gray suit stood up? Because here is what none of them knew. Not Daniel Ashworth in his bespoke jacket, not Celeste Moreau in her Valentino, not the 112 guests with their crystal glasses and their quiet, strategic laughter. The man in the plain gray suit was 71 years old, and the plain gray suit was covering something. Underneath it, pressed and ready, was the full-dress military uniform of His Majesty King Aldrich of Sorvain, Commander of the Royal Armed Forces, holder of the Order of the Sovereign Star, decorated with 19 military commendations acquired over a career that had begun when he was 19 years old and had been fighting for something real since before Daniel Ashworth was born. And the woman in the cream blouse was his daughter. Let me take you back to where this started, because the beginning is where I made the choices that led to this room, and understanding those choices is the only way to understand what happened next. My name is Isabelle Renee Aldrich, of House Sorvain. I am the Crown Princess of Sorvain, a constitutional monarchy in Northern Europe with a population of 7 million people and a sovereign wealth fund valued at the most recent published audit at approximately 340 billion euros. The House of Sorvain controls, additionally, through a network of royal trusts and dynastic holding companies established across 6 generations, private assets in energy, technology, maritime logistics, and financial services that bring the total to something in the vicinity of 560 billion euros when fully consolidated. I am the only child of King Aldrich and the late Queen Marguerite, who died when I was 16. After my mother's death, it was my father and me, and the palace in the capital city of Sorvain, and the work of being a royal family of 2 in a country that took its constitutional obligations seriously. I was prepared for governance from childhood. I spoke 5 languages by the time I was 20. I had a first-class degree in economics from the University of Edinburgh, taken under my real name with a security detail that my father and I had managed to reduce to 2 people by my 2nd year through a series of arguments I will spare you the details of. I had completed a postgraduate qualification in public finance. I sat on the boards of 3 Sorvain state institutions as an observer before I was 25. I was also, by 26, completely certain that I had never had a relationship that was not contaminated by the knowledge of what I represented. Every man who had been interested in me had known, before they expressed the interest, that I was Crown Princess. Every conversation, every dinner, every expressed feeling had been filtered through the awareness of what being near me could mean for someone's status, career, or ambitions. I had watched this dynamic closely enough to understand it in its finest detail, and I had reached the conclusion that I would never know, under ordinary circumstances, whether anyone wanted me or the crown. So I made a plan. It was my father's least favorite of my plan, and I have produced plans he did not like over the course of my life, so the competition is meaningful. I constructed an identity, Isabelle Martin, French-British dual national, employed as a personal banking advisor at a branch of a mid-tier bank in Edinburgh. The identity was supported by documentation that I will not describe in detail, but that was comprehensive. I arranged with my father that I would take 2 years of private life, that I would have security, never visible, but always present, and that I would return when I had found what I was looking for, or when I had concluded it did not exist. My father said, 2 years. I said, to start. He said, Isabelle. I said, I need to know, Papa. I need to know if it is possible. He looked at me for a long time. He had the face that serious men develop when they love someone and cannot protect them from the thing that will either teach them something essential or break them entirely. All right, he said, but I will be there. Not visibly, but there. I said, I know. I moved to Edinburgh. I rented a flat in Marchmont, a 2nd-floor flat with bay windows and wooden floors, and a kitchen the size of a boat galley. I walked to work. I managed client accounts and helped people plan for mortgages and retirement savings and the financial architecture of ordinary lives. And I was good at it, and no one cared that I was good at it for any reason other than that it made their service experience better. I met Daniel Ashworth 14 months into my time in Edinburgh. He was referred to my branch by a business associate who managed his company's accounts with us. He was 34, a management consultant who had recently left a large firm to establish his own boutique practice. He had a small office in the new town and 2 clients and a plan that he described in our first professional meeting with the contained energy of someone who was genuinely convinced it would work. He asked me to dinner 3 weeks after that first meeting. I said yes. He was good company. He was thoughtful about his work and curious about mine. He had grown up in a town in Northumberland that he described with the mixed feelings of someone who had left a place that made him and was not entirely sure what he thought about that. He had worked hard to get where he was. He valued the working hard over the getting there, which was a distinction I found genuinely interesting, because most people valued it the other way. We dated for 6 months before he told me he loved me. We were walking on Arthur's seat in the early morning. His idea, impractical shoes, magnificent view. And he said it without preparation, the way people say things that are true and have been waiting to come out. I said it back. It felt real, in the way that things feel real when you have been testing for realness for a long time and something finally passes. We moved in together after a year, a larger flat in Stockbridge, above a bookshop, with a sitting room that got the afternoon light. He cooked on Sundays, I cooked on Tuesdays. We argued about small things and resolved them, and I felt, for the first time in my adult life, like I was living in a life rather than preparing for one. He proposed at 18 months, with a ring that he told me had taken him 3 months to find because he had very specific ideas about what it should look like, and almost none of the right vocabulary to explain them to jewelers. It was an oval sapphire set simply in white gold. I said yes before he had finished asking. The problems began, as they so often do, when success arrived. Daniel's boutique practice started to grow. He brought in a significant client, then another. His reputation in Edinburgh's business community began to establish itself, and with establishment came invitations to events, introductions to people, the gradual construction of a social world that was different from the one we had lived in for 2 years. And Celeste Moreau entered that world like weather, specifically like the kind of weather that arrives without warning and reorganizes everything. Celeste Moreau was 41 years old and the founder of Moreau Capital, a private equity firm that operated from offices in London, Paris, and Singapore. Her personal net worth had been published by a financial magazine the previous year at approximately 6.8 billion euros. She was tall, precisely dressed, and had the specific quality of a person who had spent 20 years making decisions that cost other people things and had become entirely comfortable with that. She retained Daniel's firm for a consulting project in January of our 4th year together. He came home the evening after their first meeting and said it was a significant opportunity. He said it the way he had said things about his work for 4 years, with the contained excitement of someone who takes professional development seriously. By April, he was coming home later. By June, the texture of conversations had changed. By September, I had noticed the pattern clearly enough to know what it meant, and I had made a decision about what I was going to do with that knowledge. I was going to wait. I was going to let him make the choice that was already being made, fully, visibly, in front of witnesses, because I had learned, growing up in a palace, that the best time to reveal what something is worth is not when you suspect it. It is when the proof is complete and undeniable, and in front of everyone who needs to see it. The rehearsal dinner was at the Hargrove Hotel in Edinburgh, a restored Georgian building with a ballroom that had original plasterwork and enough history in its walls to make the evening feel significant even before the first course was served. 112 guests, dressed for celebration, white linen and ivory roses and crystal candle holders. The catering was good. The champagne was good. My father was in the back of the room. He had arrived 2 days earlier. He was dressed in the plain gray suit that we had agreed on, the suit that would not draw attention, that would allow him to sit in the corner of a room full of wealthy, well-dressed people and be seen as none of them and none of their caliber. The suit was an act of deliberate disguise, and my father, who wore it with the patience of a man who understands that the most effective power is the power that goes unnoticed until the moment it does not, wore it as if it were the most natural thing in the world. He had been at 2 previous events over the past 6 months, always in the background, always watching. His security had been arranged separately and was invisible in the room in the way that very good security always is. Daniel came through the door at 8:47 with Celeste Moreau on his arm, and I watched my father note the entrance from the far wall, and I saw him understand, in the way that people who are paying attention understand things, that the moment had arrived. Daniel walked to the center of the room. He picked up a microphone that had been placed for the evening's toasts. He looked at the room. He smiled. He said everything I described at the beginning: the bank teller, the sale clothes, the no family, no connections, nothing to offer. The Celeste has offered me a life. The I am not going to pretend. The some of us cannot afford to be sentimental. I sat at the main table and I looked at him, and I did not cry. I did not argue. I did not move. My face was the face that I had been trained since childhood to present in situations that required composure. Not blank, not cold, but absolutely still. The face of someone who is not afraid of what is happening because they know what comes next. The room made its sounds, the honest silence of decent people, the strategic laughter of people positioning themselves. The crystal candle holders threw their warm light across 112 faces. And in the back of the room, my father stood up. He did not do it quickly. He stood the way he did everything, with the particular deliberateness of someone for whom every movement is intentional and none of it is wasted. He unbuttoned the plain gray jacket. He removed it. He folded it over the back of the chair with the same care he brought to every task, no matter how small. Underneath the gray jacket was the dress uniform of the King of Sorvain. Midnight blue, the deep, specific blue of the Sorvain royal house, with gold braid at the shoulders and cuffs and the collar. 19 medals on the left breast, each one representing something earned rather than inherited, because my father had been a military man before he was a king, and he wore the proof of it on his body. The sovereign star of Sorvain at his throat, the kingdom's highest honor, gold and white enamel on a ribbon of blue and silver. His rank insignia on the shoulders, 4 gold stars, the designation of Commander of the Royal Armed Forces. He was 71 years old, and he was 191 centimeters tall, and he moved through the ballroom of the Hargrove Hotel with the unhurried certainty of a man who had governed a nation for 23 years and had never once, in those 23 years, needed to hurry to establish the nature of his authority. The room did not go quiet immediately. It went quiet in stages, the way a room goes quiet when something enters it that people do not yet have the vocabulary for. The people nearest to my father's path went quiet first. Then the ones who saw those people go quiet and looked toward the cause. Then the ones who saw the uniform. Then everyone. The only sound in the ballroom was my father's footsteps on the parquet floor. He walked past the tables, past the white linen and the ivory roses and the crystal candle holders. He walked to the front of the room where Daniel was standing, with the microphone still in his hand, and Celeste Moreau beside him in her emerald Valentino, and the 112 guests in their formal wear, watching the thing that was happening that they did not yet understand. My father stopped. He looked at Daniel. Daniel said, "Who are you?" My father said, "I am Aldrich, King of Sorvain. The woman you have just described to this room is my daughter, Crown Princess Isabel Renee Aldrich of House Sorvain." The silence was now of a different quality, not the silence of people who do not understand, the silence of people who are understanding very quickly and do not know what to do with what they are understanding. He turned to the room. When my father addressed a room, he did not need amplification. He had a voice that had been trained by military service, by 23 years of speeches and state occasions and addresses to the Sorvain Parliament, to carry to the back of any space without effort. "My daughter chose to live privately for the past 4 years," he said. "She chose to work as an ordinary professional, to live without the apparatus of her position, because she wanted to know whether the person she chose to spend her life with was choosing her for who she is, rather than for what she represents." He paused. "She found out tonight." He looked at Celeste Moreau. His gaze was the gaze of someone doing an inventory. "Madam," he said, "I am informed that your firm, Moreau Capital, holds significant positions in 3 public companies that are listed on the Sorvain Stock Exchange. These positions were taken through a series of leveraged acquisitions over the past 18 months. The total value of those positions at yesterday's close was approximately 2.4 billion euros. Celeste Moreau's expression had shifted. The ease she had carried into the room The ease of a woman who had arrived with someone else's fiancé and expected to be untouchable was gone. What remained was something more careful and less confident. The Sorvain Stock Exchange, my father continued, operates under the authority of the Sorvain Financial Regulatory Commission, which is a body established by royal charter and subject under the Sorvain Constitutional Act to direction from the Crown in matters of national economic security. He reached into the breast pocket of his uniform. He removed a phone. Not a modern smartphone, a secure communications device, the kind used by military and diplomatic personnel, dark and rectangular, and built for function rather than design. He looked at it for a moment. I have been in contact this evening with the chairman of the Sorvain Financial Regulatory Commission, he said. The commission has opened a formal review of Moreau Capital's equity positions under the Sorvain Foreign Investment Oversight Clause, which requires the suspension of all relevant trading activity for the duration of the review. He looked at Celeste. Your positions are frozen as of, he looked at the phone, 8 minutes ago. Celeste moved first. She took a step forward. That is not possible. You cannot. I can, my father said. I have. He put the phone back in his breast pocket. The review will take between 6 and 18 months. During that time, you will not be able to close, transfer, or liquidate your Sorvain listed positions. The legal costs of challenging the review through the Sorvain courts will be substantial, and I am informed by our legal office that the constitutional basis for the action is unassailable. He looked at Daniel. Daniel had gone white. The microphone was still in his hand. He was looking at my father the way people look at things they cannot process. Mr. Ashworth, my father said, you described my daughter as a woman with nothing to offer. You described her as a bank teller who wears clothes found on sale and has no family to speak of. He paused. My daughter chose to be those things. She chose them deliberately so that she could know something true about the person she was with. She knows it now, and so do you. He looked toward me. I stood up. I walked to where my father was standing. He offered me his arm. I took it. I looked at Daniel. He opened his mouth. He closed it. He looked at the microphone in his hand and then at the floor. I looked at Celeste Moreau. Her face had the specific expression of a woman calculating losses at very high speed. The Valentino gown that had entered the room as a statement of dominance was still the same gown, but it communicated something different now. It communicated the gap between the power she had believed she had and the power that was actually present. I said, Celeste, the frozen positions represent, I am told, approximately 60% of your firm's current committed capital. The rest is in instruments that are not affected by tonight's action. You will survive this, financially, eventually, if you manage carefully. But the reputational consequence of this evening becoming public, and it will become public because 112 people are sitting in this room, will be more expensive than the frozen positions. People who could have helped you will not. She said nothing. There was nothing to say. I turned to Daniel. Daniel, I am not going to say something final to you. You said everything final tonight. On behalf of both of us, I wish you clarity about what you have chosen. I think in time, you will understand exactly what it cost you. Not in terms of what I represent, in terms of who I am. But that understanding will not be useful to you, so I will not elaborate. He said, Isabel, please, if I had known. You did know, I said. You knew me for 4 years. You chose anyway. The knowing is not the question. I looked at my father. I am ready to leave. He nodded. He turned to the room. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the disruption to your evening. You were invited to celebrate a wedding. There will not be one tomorrow. I hope the food was good. There was a sound in the room that was not quite laughter and not quite shock, but some combination of both. And then the sound of people beginning to talk. And then the specific rising volume of a room that has just witnessed something it will discuss for a very long time. We walked out of the Hargrove Hotel ballroom, through the lobby with its polished stone floor and its low light, through the main doors, into the Edinburgh night. Outside, a convoy had been arranged. It had been positioned 3 blocks away since 7 o'clock, on the instruction of the head of my father's security detail. 12 vehicles, armored, dark, The Sorvain royal crest in silver on the door of each had moved into position around the Hargrove in the time since my father had stood up from his chair. They were there when we came through the doors, arranged on the street with the quiet precision of people who are very good at what they do. The lead vehicle's door was open. My father's equerry stood beside it. My father and I walked down the steps and across the pavement. I stopped for a moment. The Edinburgh night was cold and clear, the kind of October night that smells of stone and old leaves, and the particular atmosphere of a city that has been making history for a very long time. "Are you all right?" my father asked. I thought about the question. I thought about 4 years of deliberately being small, of choosing the sale rack and the modest flat, and the career that required no protection and no title, of cooking on Tuesdays and arguing about small things, and believing, for a period that was real, even if the context was constructed, that I had found something genuine. "I am all right," I said. "He did not deserve you," my father said. "Not as a princess, not as a bank teller, not in any version." "I know," I said. "I knew actually, for several months, but I needed to see it completed. I needed it to be visible." My father looked at me with the expression he had sometimes when I said things that surprised him by being exactly right. "Your grandmother used to say that," he said, "that the truth is only useful when it is visible." "I know," I said. "She told me." We got into the car. The door closed. The convoy moved. Celeste Moreau's Sorvain equity positions remained frozen for 14 months. The regulatory review, when it concluded, found no specific wrongdoing, but identified 3 compliance failures in the acquisition process that resulted in significant fines and the permanent revocation of Moreau Capital's license to operate on the Sorvain exchange. The reputational consequences were, as I had predicted, more damaging than the financial one. 2 of her major institutional partners in London withdrew their capital commitments within 3 weeks of the Hargrove evening. The story had, as I told her it would, become public. Daniel Ashworth's boutique consulting practice lost its primary client, Moreau Capital, within 4 days. He spent 6 months attempting to rebuild the practice's client base and was unsuccessful at the level he had achieved. He sold the practice and returned to employed work at a larger firm. He is, I am told, doing adequately. I did not check. I am back in Sorvain. I have been back for 11 months. The work is significant and real, and I have returned to it knowing something about myself that I couldn't have known otherwise, that I am capable of being ordinary, and that being ordinary is not a diminishment, it is a choice. And the ability to make that choice, to lay down the apparatus of power and live without it for a time, is itself a form of power that most people do not have. Daniel thought he had found a better option. He had not understood that the option he was leaving was not a bank teller who bought her clothes on sale. It was a crown princess who had chosen for 4 years to be a bank teller who bought her clothes on sale because she wanted to know the truth about the person she was with. The truth, in the end, required no effort to reveal. It revealed itself. My father stood up from a chair in a hotel ballroom in Edinburgh and removed a gray suit jacket, and the room understood immediately what it had been failing to see. Not because of the medals, or the gold braid, or the royal crest, but because of the way he moved, the way he occupied his own authority, the way that power, when it stops pretending to be something smaller, fills the space it was always meant to fill. True power does not need to announce itself. It only needs to stop hiding. And when it stops, when it stands up and removes the plain gray jacket and walks to the front of the room goes silent, and the silence says everything. So tell me, did you feel it? That moment when my father stood up from the chair in the back of the room and the plain gray suit came off, and 112 people understood all at once that the most powerful person in the building had been sitting quietly against the wall all evening? Did Daniel Ashworth and Celeste Moreau get exactly what they deserved? If this story of patient love, deliberate disguise, and the kind of justice that arrives in a military uniform with 19. Medals and a phone call to a financial regulator made your night better. Smash that like button. Share this with everyone who has ever been dismissed by someone who did not understand what they were looking at. And subscribe so you never miss a story of crowns, karma, and the devastating beauty of power that has simply stopped pretending to be small.